The fact that we were on electric bikes took people by surprise, yeah.
Previously on the Harley-Davidson podcast.
They are the first guys who did this trip on electric bikes.
Every one of those early days and those early charges was a first.
EV infrastructure is non-existent in South America.
I don't think we quite realized, what a challenge it would be.
To make stuff easy is not really what we're about.
The guys really became dialed in with the vehicles.
We're like, can't we go into Bolivia in that border crossing that nobody ever takes? And like, next thing you know, we were taking it.
Just putting yourself out into the world and trying to get from one place to another, you're out of your comfort zone. It puts you more in touch with yourself, I think. And I think that's probably what I'm looking for.
Welcome to the Harley-Davidson podcast, Long Way Up Edition, a 6-part series where we dive into the epic 13,000-mile trip taken by Ewan McGregor and Charley Boorman that took them from Ushuaia, South America, up to Los Angeles, and all on electric Harley-Davidson live wires. In this episode, Ewan, Charley, and the Long Way Up crew talk about filming the series, the different countries they journeyed through, and the people they met along the way. Here's Ewan McGregor and Charley Boorman.
Everywhere we go, Charley and I, we meet people who come up and tell us about an adventure they had, and they saw a long way around, and they did a trip with their dad or whatever it be. And I think that's the thing I'm most proud of. If it encourages people to get out and see the world, it's just a beautiful thing to meet people and to realize that, we have a way of living in America and in Europe, and we're very lucky. But so many people in the world live in different ways, and their priorities are very different. We travel down through Ethiopia or Malawi, or people have very different priorities there, and our life isn't better than theirs. It's just different. And it's lovely to be able to experience that firsthand. It makes your sort of internal life richer, I think.
There were certain countries that I think when you, as you said, when you live in the United States or in Europe, you're often told, when you say to people, we're going to go to Colombia, for instance, and people go, that's a dangerous place. And you go, is it? And they go, oh yeah, it's very dangerous. Have you been there? No. And so they just assume, because of Pablo Escobar back in the 80s, 90s, there was all these things, and those kind of stories stick. And they went through a huge change in Colombia, and Colombia's completely changed now. And for sure, there's bad bits of it, but you can say the same for the States or Europe or anywhere. I think the best thing in the world is to go and see these places for yourself. And I can promise you, hand on my heart, that the world is good, and the countries that you go to are lovely and generous. By doing these long ways, for sure, it's about riding motorbikes and it's about being on the open road. But so much of it is about the people that you meet along the way.
I think that's the biggest reason for doing it, is the not knowing what's around the next corner and not knowing who are the next people you're going to meet. And because you're on a bike and because you're sort of vulnerable to the elements, and I don't know, people are extraordinarily generous and welcoming in Mongolia. They're like the nomadic people who travel by horse. Well, you're on a bike and you're sort of experiencing the same, you're vulnerable to the elements like they are. They treat you like one of them. You're a traveler, you're nomadic. And on this trip, it was the same. We had extraordinary generosity from people because we're asking to borrow their, plug. Can we plug in? People were always enthusiastic about us trying to do it. We got this real sense that people were into this new form of transportation, that people responded to it in a really positive way. We didn't come across a negative aspect about it at all. People were enthusiastic about us trying to do it.
The kindness of the locals. As an American, I can only hope that a foreigner coming into this country, coming into America, would be as well treated as we were treated when we were in Chile or Bolivia or Ecuador. I mean, people literally opening up their doors. How can we help you? David Alexanian. I am one of the directors and producers of Long Way Up. It's not because they recognize Ewan. He's got a helmet on. They just want to help. So, I don't know. It was another one of these insanely positive experiences, and I hope it comes across in the series. That's the only thing I always lose sleep over.
I just remember one lady, we'd been riding up, it was quite a long day riding, we'd stopped, we met this guy in his settlement, he showed us like he had a wind farm and solar panels, and we tried to charge there and we couldn't. The electricity just wasn't constant enough and the bikes wouldn't take the charge. So we left and we were trying to get to this town, and it was getting late in the day and we hadn't noticed that it was uphill. Like, we left his place and we headed off and we thought we were fine. We looked like we had enough charge to get to this town. And we got onto this hill and we're just going up and up and up, and the wind was right in our face, and the mileage on the bike was just going down and down and down, and the mileage on the GPS was staying where it was, and it was just like going in the wrong direction. So we pulled off the road because we saw this little farm. It was just like a little, it wasn't even like a farm, it was sort of like a little mini farm or something. And we just rode up to the gate, we went in and we waved at this. A mum came out of this house. She had 3 or 4 kids, and we asked her in our terrible Spanish if we could plug into her farm and maybe put our tents up in the field there, and would she mind? And she was immediately just like, she just started getting, kids were getting extension cords, and it was just like it was almost like we were expected. That's what it felt like to me. And in the end, we couldn't. The power in her place just wasn't strong enough to charge the 2 bikes. But that happened all the time, that sort of generosity of people,
On a bike trip particularly, you bump into people much more than if you are in a car, because you just have to. You stop more often, and people are curious. They come and meet you. My name is Claudio von Planta. I'm a director of photography. Even if you don't speak the language, you connect very quickly. And anywhere in the world, I think that's one major discovery on these long way trips. And I think for Ewan and Charley, it was very similar. You are amazed how many nice people you meet, and there's just fundamentally, you suddenly realize there is a common base for all humanity. Everybody likes to meet a foreigner because you are naturally curious, and you would like to hear something new, what the foreigner has to say from his place where he comes from. And then generally people are hospitable. They like to help you out. They offer you food. They offer you shelter overnight, to stay somewhere, to have a roof over your head. And these are just so very, very beautiful experiences, which we hopefully, can convey in these shows. I'm pretty sure that's kind of, it comes across, because it's just universal wherever we went.
That's the story we like to tell. We like to tell that we have much more in common with our neighbors than any of us ever expect.
Some of these people you literally bump into. We will plan. Some people look at our journeys, and of course we've planned some things. You have to. Machu Picchu, for instance, or going to the glaciers. But the rest of it is just people you meet along the way. I'm Russ Malkin, producer, director. That lovely couple that were clearly in love with each other, cycling. I think that was in Argentina. Or the gaucho that plays his guitar. The one-legged guy going up over the Andes. I mean, people were amazing, and it's nice to meet them and hear their stories.
Of course, you remember the really tough bits, like in Bolivia and the deep gravel and sand on big adventure bikes. No one likes that. But the people that you meet a lot in those places and around those places, and people that come to help you if you need help, are always there, and that's what's endearing.
I think being on a motorbike as well helps that communication with people. And I say to people about the biking culture, I said, the thing about bikers is you can be a friend with another biker like that, because he's on a bike. You walk straight, hello mate. Oh, hello, how long you had that? And you're straight. You wouldn't do that with a person with a car. You go, who are you? what are you talking about? A biker? Straight in there. It's instant friendship. And you can be talking and chatting and have a beer like you've known each other for 40 years. You've known them for 4 seconds. And I think that's what makes biking unique, is that ability to make friends fast.
It's amazing on these long way trips to discover the countries on the ground, one country after the other. So you don't fly somewhere. So you gradually you discover how the countries change, the geography changes. You come to a big river, and then on the other side of the river is the next country, or you come to a mountain range. Very interesting on long way round was from Russia. Before we got into Mongolia, we went to the Altai Mountains. So this is kind of the border territory between Russia and Mongolia. So the Altai Mountains, everything is green, green, green. And you come across the mountain, and then it's desert, desert, desert. That's Mongolia. Because of the way the wind goes, on one side of the mountain it rains all the time, and on the other side of the mountain there's no more rain. So you understand why countries are different.
One of the lovely things about traveling overland is that, one, you don't get jet lag. 2, you don't get just parachuted into a place, and then you're spending 2 or 3 days just trying to amalgamate yourself into that place. Whereas when you travel overland, you don't get the jet lag, you don't notice the time changes. And then when you get to a border, one of the most exciting things about a border is that you arrive there, and just on that line, you cross over that line and everything changes. The color of the tarmac, the color of the paint on the road, the way signposts are displayed, houses, architecture, what people are dressed in, how people go about, how people drive or ride on the road. Everything changes, and that's one of the most extraordinary things that you take. I remember going from one of the most dramatic ones I ever saw was going from Sudan to Ethiopia, and we'd gone through Sudan. It was bone dry and desert and baking hot, and then literally as a line crossed, we crossed over into Ethiopia, and it was just trees and cows and green everywhere. And so, and you're just sitting there and you just think, wow. And you're thinking, we rode here.
Just putting yourself out into the world and trying to get from one place to another, you're out of your comfort zone. It puts you more in touch with yourself, I think. And I think that's probably what I'm looking for. Is I love seeing the landscape. I'm very moved by the landscape. And when you're on sitting on the back of a bike, you're sort of part of it. You're really in it. You're not protected from it in any way. And I love watching it change, and you travel at a slow enough pace on a motorbike to really see the world change around you, and I've been so lucky to see some beautiful places.
I just think that, we should all try and enjoy the planet that we live on and do some good as well. So, I think the planet is a beautiful place. We need to look after it, but explore it, enjoy it in your own way. I don't mean in the back of an air-conditioned bus. I mean, just do it your way. It doesn't have to be anything ambitious. I say, like, one day's adventure sleeping wild on Dartmoor you never forget it for the rest of your life. But if we all did some good at the same time, that's why we work with UNICEF. Because we thought, well, look, if we can help UNICEF and we can highlight their good work that they do. So we put 3 stories in each one, long way round, long way down, long way up. We did 3 stories. We fought hard, by the way, to get to those locations so we don't let them down. We also did the Cool Earth project. We went to see the Amazon rainforest and what's happening to that with regard to the deforestation, and how a charity called Cool Earth is trying to sort of empower the tribes there to sort of look after their own affairs and manage their own businesses so they don't have to sell the wood to look after their families. Do you see what I mean? So I think that's an important part of what we do as well.
We rushed through this trip. We've spent one day in most of these towns, and almost every one of them could have used 2 or 3 more. I think the countries in particular that turned me on the most. I'd spent a very little time in Argentina before, had never been to Bolivia, had never been to Ecuador, Peru, and then Colombia blew all of our minds. Medellin's one of the prettiest cities I've ever been to. We were there for 36 hours. I'm dying to go back to Colombia. The people were extraordinary. Nicaragua, same thing. The politics of the 80s in Nicaragua is spectacularly beautiful. I mean, I love Costa Rica too, but Nicaragua feels like a bit less popular destination, and therefore you have a more authentic experience. I absolutely love Nicaragua and Bolivia. Really, I mean, if anybody has a chance to get on a plane and go to La Paz, I'd recommend it. I mean, La Paz is one of the most extraordinary cities you've ever seen. It looks like something out of a graphic novel, just with the architecture and the mountains and then when you get out of town and you go to the deserts, the purple skies, the red sands, nothing like it in the world. Mexico is just spectacular. We asked security for advice in Mexico, and they tend to frighten you. Our experience with Mexico and Mexican people, beyond. Mexico is a spectacular, spectacular place. I really love it. South and Central America broke my heart. We loved it.
It was a great route. We saw so much. The diversity on this route is probably greater than the other two, because we just went through everything from snow and rain and mist and fog and dust and ice and heat and dry and God knows what we came up against. We came up the whole thing. But I think one thing that potentially influenced the route a little bit was, being on electric, we couldn't afford to go too far off the beaten track. So, 13,000 miles is still a long way in 3.5 months. So it was more of a direct route, but still touching the key points that we all wanted to go to, like the Atacama, like Machu Picchu and all that sort of stuff. I love Colombia. I've always loved Panama, and I think that's also because I like a bit of engineering. So I love those locks. I love Panama City because of its newness, but it's colonial area, and they've got some good bars and restaurants there, but you can get out into the jungle. I think Bolivia is always fascinating as a country that still has very much got its own identity still. It hasn't become so touristified that it's lost its charm. It's still, the ladies are still with a bowler hats and stuff like that.
Wonderful people and the landscapes and the riding. And oh my gosh, the delicious food.
If you don't know South America, it's surprising what kind of seafood you get, particularly in Peru. And I was quite surprised. I didn't, I just saw Peru as a country which is quite dry. There's quite a lot of desert. And wherever I could, I had fish there. At the beginning in Argentina, when you go to Argentina, everybody thinks, that's the place to eat meat, as much as you can dream of, that really big, chunky meat. And that's exactly what we did. We started in Ushuaia. The first thing, we go to a place and eat all this incredible meat.
Nearly every country we've been to has had fantastic food. So that's something which is really nice, is to make sure that you eat well as well, because if you miss out meals and forget to eat because you're in the middle of nowhere or you're trying to get somewhere, food it takes a big part of your mood swings as well. If you're hungry and haven't eaten in a long time or properly, decisions and things that you're doing become harder.
Whatever you do in life, very often it's your state of mind which is key. And to any situation in life, you can always find a flip side, either negative or positive. It goes in both directions. With the producers Russ and Dave, the bigger the challenge you throw at them, the more they go for it to find a solution. It's unbelievable. They absolutely have never seen any moment where they said, okay, that's it, I'm giving in, I give up, I can't. Never, ever, ever. It's ridiculous.
It's a trust thing, and I think if somebody feels very strongly, you kind of have that card to play. I can say to Russ, I know that's not what you want to do. Trust me, I feel strongly about it. Or he might say the same to me. Because in any one situation, there are 8 ways to handle it. Oh, we're about to miss the ferry. Let's forget it. Let's stay here an extra day. No, let's push ahead and get to the ferry. It doesn't sound like it means anything, right? Because, okay, there's another ferry tomorrow. But the knock-on effect when you do trips is pretty material. You start missing a day here and a day there. It's cumulative, and it does jack things up.
Ewan and Charley and Dave, we all have that attitude. If you look at Long Way Round and we get to Yakutsk and the Road of Bones, and everyone was telling us turn back. It's like, what do you mean go back? That's not even an option. There might be other options, but that isn't one. None of us are quitters. We're not quitters. My saying, I suppose, is look at all options And then out of those options, you pick the best. But you've got to find the options. And there generally are options. And you need everybody to sort of eventually go, okay, pragmatically look at that and go, okay, that could work. Let's all sign up to that one. And we did that. For instance, when we were going through Colombia, we had to fly the plane, we had to take a boat, we had to get another thing, we had to get over the Darien Gap. And once a plan is executed, or once a plan is conceived, it's a bit like a chess strategy, isn't it? If you execute it, you will eventually get to the end, as long as nothing goes wrong in the middle, but you adapt again, right? But you have to play it through. A half-executed plan is not going to succeed.
If he and I were the same, half of the equation would be missing. That's basically what it is. And then Ewan and Charley have their own dynamics. That's a rock and roll crazy marriage they've got. It's a beautiful, wonderful thing. But they make it work, and they're very different energetically. The guys are super different. I mean, I think maybe that's why. And there's just a chemistry, which is cool. So it's always fun.
I just think we're very good mates, and we've known each other for so long, and we've done 3 of these big trips now, so we sort of read each other really well, I think. And if somebody needs to be left alone, I think we can see that in each other, and you just leave them alone. And if somebody needs picked up, we also can recognize that, and so we're there for each other. But I think you have to allow each other to have your own experience, and people always want different things out of anything we do in life, and everyone experiences things that happen around them in different ways, in personal ways or unique ways, and you have to allow each other to have let that person have their experience while you have yours, and you don't have to have the same experience. You can have a different feeling about something that happens on the road, and that's all right. One of you isn't wrong. One of you is just feeling different, experiencing it in a different way.
I think the key thing for me anyway, directing these sorts of films at any time has always been trying to capture the emotion. You can say to people, oh, here's Machu Picchu, and then on a bit of voiceover back in a nice booth in London, this is the story of this temple. But there's really no emotion to that. It might be interesting and fascinating, and I'm not knocking any documentary that does that, but you're not connected. And actually to have 2 great people like Ewan and Charley who are dead excited or dead despondent, and allowing the cameras and the audio recorder. We had an audio recorder recording all the time. So if they said anything, we captured it, as well as the visual recorders that they could activate. That means that you're capturing how they feel at that moment. And to try and recapture that back in London in a voiceover booth is impossible. If you stubbed your foot on the bed tonight and you shout out and cuss and swear, and I caught that, and I said, can you do that again tomorrow? No way. Well, you could kick the bed again. But so I think capturing it as it happens. And also the other thing is trust. I think that because we're a tight unit and we're friends, I'm not like a producer that's come in who's just got a job of work to do, or a director that's been told, why don't you just try and catch everybody out, just to sort of, you know what I mean, to just try and get a bit of drama. We're not about that, and I don't really like that sort of thing. This is about them going, well, look, we're going to be open, and if something happened that was really outrageous and we didn't want to, and so consequently people are just themselves, which is very rare in front of a TV camera, that you can just be yourself. And we capture it, and because we've got so many cameras rolling and so much audio, then you get something that's a bit more pure. So I think you've got to have people that just roll on stuff and capture it as it happens. And I always said, this is not a TV show. It's an expedition film for television.
I hope that the audience, somebody watching, feels like they're on the back of Ewan's bike or back of Charley's bike, right? And that you're in it with us. And I think that was a style that, we, helped launch in 2003. We did the first one.
Documentary films, you have the ambition to be, as authentic as possible. Basically, you confronting the challenges in the real world without having 7,000 people left, right, and centers and nannies, arranging things for you. And that's what Ewan and Charley really enjoy. I don't have a major reason to interfere what they do. I let them do whatever they decide, and I'm quite happy to be the observer and tag along to capture as it happens. As I say, authenticity is what I'm interested most, as little interference as possible. And then probably after a while, they just get used to the fact that I'm there with a camera, whether I record or don't record, they don't even care anymore. And that's usually the moment when you capture very nice sequences, when people don't care about the camera anymore. Because I operate on my own, completely self-sufficient, I also try to have very small cameras. The smaller the better, because it's less intrusive if you stick a camera into somebody's face. And if the camera is at least not too massive, it's just easier. And people forget about it quicker.
I would say that the advent of more technology, for me, adds more fun to the whole thing. Technology that allows us to film things with less people so that you can move lighter and quicker, like throwing a drone up we could throw that thing up within 40 seconds of stopping.
What a game changer that was. I remember organizing a helicopter in New York for our convoy in 2003. No helicopters this time, we got a drone, which was awesome.
And now you just you put the drone up, and it just allows you to have this extra perspective and to see things like a bird wherever you want. Just put it up there, and suddenly everything you can present it in a huge dimension.
The GoPros and the other small cameras on the crash helmets and the bike just captured everything as it happened. The guys having tiny little diary cams to film in their tents or in their bedrooms, caught all their emotions. The Aries sort of caught the epic nature of where we were. So to me, I loved every component of technology, and because it's smaller, you can pack down lighter, and we just don't have to carry so much. It does mean that you need multi-talented people who are patient. This type of event can push people to the limit, and you need people that can have a great personality and who don't mind working late, but who will just pull the kit out as and when we need it to capture the story that we all want to see.
I have been in these areas. I knew roughly, what was ahead. And so that was good for me to organize my equipment. You will struggle with the climate. It will be cold, it will be hot, it will be bloody wet, it will be everything. Everything is now on little memory cards. You have to be just kind of very paranoid about not losing the chip. So wherever you store it. So I have everything always on me. So I have these shirts with all these many pockets. Everybody laughs about it as well, because I have always the bloody same shirts, but I know exactly which pocket, which pocket I have the battery, the memory chips, and the cleaning kit for the lens and all that stuff. I have always the same shirt because of that.
We're all like, I'm not saying leaders type of thing, but, I think you've got to have an attitude where you want to keep moving forward. Every day's different. You say, this is the plan for today. This is where we're trying to get to. This is how we're going to do it. This is where we're going to charge. And then something goes wrong, which invariably it does. And you can't predict that. So, okay, well, maybe let's shape shift a little bit and think, well, maybe if we cut this corner off or do you see what I mean? But of course, with mechanical and electrical stuff, you are a little bit there, beck and call if a fuse goes or something like that. And that did happen, let's be straight, Ewan's bike and everything, but we managed to work with you guys to solve the problem. You guys, Harley guys, were amazing. You know what I mean? You were as much responsible for this madness as us. You're going, yeah, we think we can make this bike on time. You sure? Yeah. And I think a lot of people volunteered their own time, didn't they, behind the scenes, and they were committed to it, and they were solving problems even while, with the charging cables that were coming down and the various components that were being built. For us, we're very, very respectful of Harley-Davidson. It's an awesome company and the people behind it, because it does come down to people. None of these things are sold by a brand. They're sold by people that work for that because they believe in it.
For 4 months, we became Harley-Davidson test riders,
On the next episode of the Harley-Davidson podcast. Long Way Up Edition.
You know, there were moments where we looked and thinking, this is going to be unachievable. You know, how are we going to do this?
We did something nobody's ever done with an electric motorcycle.
What I think people don't understand is infrastructure's gaining speed fast.
I think that this is going to wake a lot of folks up in terms of some of the apprehension about EV.
People need to get out into nature and do an adventure.
It proves that if you want to have a grand adventure and you want to use this technology to do it, that it's totally possible.
You know, we were lucky enough to be able to sort of show people what the bikes can actually do.
It was a great job to have for a while. We feel like we're part of it. You know, we've got a little bit of our DNA is in the Livewire bike itself.
Catch new episodes of Long Way Up exclusively on Apple TV+.